Object-oriented programming is a type of programming paradigm. Whoa, wait. What is a paradigm? Well, a paradigm is a way or style to write and organize code. There is procedural, functional, imperative, object-oriented, and much more. We will focus on learning object-oriented programming in Python. However, for this tutorial, you need to know how to write basic Python and run your code. If you need any help with that, check my Python playlist in the description below. Object-oriented programming, as the name indicates, it works with objects. Objects can be real-world entities, like a car or a human, for example. To build a car, you need a blueprint, which defines how the car will be built and what are its stats. In OOP or object-oriented programming, to build an object, you need a class, which acts as the blueprint. This class defines the attributes, which refers to the basic structure of a car, like the color, by who it was built, and which year it was built. Also, a class defines the behavior of an object, like maybe this car is a self-driving car. You press a button to enable self-driving mode, for example. In OOP, we use methods to define the behavior of the object. How to create a class in Python? To create a class in Python, you need to mention the class keyword followed by the class name, which in my case will be car. Now inside this class, I will write two methods. The first method will be start engine, and it will accept self as parameter, and I'll explain what means self later on. It will print start or engine on. Okay. The next method will be def and turn off engine, which also takes self as parameter, but this time it will print engine off. We created a simple class which is car and has two methods, which is start engine and turn off engine. Now how do we create our object, our car object? Before we do that, I need to explain something to you. When you say number equal to int 5, this is basically a simple variable number that stores the number 5, right? Now let me print the type of this variable by using the type function, and I'm gonna call number. So I ran the code and it says class int or class integer. Basically, the type integer, float, and strings are called pre-built types, okay? So they are defined by the developer or created by the developer of Python. As you can see, it is written class int. Now what does that mean? That means you've been working with objects without even knowing it. Everything in Python is kind of an object, okay? In our case, when we create number, we assign to it a class of integer, and we pass to the int function an object which is 5. So 5 is the object of the class int, or another terminology is that 5 is an instance of the class integer. It is the same as saying 5 is an object of the class int. Now the variable is simply a reference to the object 5. Why did I show you this? Well, because let's think together. How do we create our car object, okay? Let's say I'm gonna create first a car1 variable, okay? Inside this car1 variable, I'm gonna store my object. How to create an object? Well, we mentioned the class name, which is car, followed by parentheses. And congratulations, you just created your first object in Python. Simple as that, right? Now we cannot input any data to this class, not right now, not in this video. Later on, we will learn how to use the constructor in Python, and we'll see how to input data to a object, okay? So for now, stick with me with this notation. Now that we have one object and now we know how to actually create an object, let's create another one. I'm gonna say car2 equal to how to create an object. Well, we mentioned the car or the class name followed by parentheses, and now we have two objects of type car, okay? Now if I say print type of car1 variable, let's see what this will print for us. As you can see, it prints class, main, which is the model we're working in, and car, which is the class of the variable. So basically, class car is the data type that we're working with. Same as class int here for our number, okay? Now we have two objects, car1, which is an instance of the class car, and car2, which is also an instance of the car class, okay? Now how do we actually call the methods of this class? Now let's go back to functions and methods, okay? Now functions and methods are actually the same, but a method is created inside a class while a function is created outside a class. Like def add a and b is a simple function that returns a plus b, so it adds two integers, okay? Now how do I call this function? Well, all I need to do is just say add mention the parameters like 5 and 4. Now because this function returns something, I'm going to store the output inside a variable called x, and I'm going to print x just to get the output, okay? Now let me just run the code. I get 9. So this is actually simple Python. You know how to do that, and you know how to call a function. But what can we do with methods? Can we call methods? Well, of course we can. Let me delete this function, and I'm gonna say, well, I'm gonna call the method start engine. Now this is completely wrong with methods, because first we have a parameter of self, and Python is actually launching us an error, okay? Now when you work with methods, you don't just call the method, okay? You don't just write its name. You need to mention first the class name, car.startEngine. Right now, Python is not giving us any error, but this is the correct way of calling a method. You mention first the class name dot method name. But we have a parameter called self. And now this is the perfect moment for me to explain to you what self exactly means. Now we have two objects, okay? And now I'm telling Python to actually start the engine of my car. So I'm telling Python, start the engine of my car. Python will tell me, but you didn't specify for me which car you want to start its engine. I have two cars, car 1 and car 2. I just said car.startEngine. Python will tell me, okay, you have two cars, which car do you want to start the engine? So self actually represents the object that you want to work with. So if you want to work with car 1, self will be equal to car 1. But if you want to work with car 2, self will be equal to car 2. So self is just the object, okay? So when you pass self, it means you're passing the object. So calling this method like this without mentioning which object you're gonna work is not going to give you the output that you expect, okay? So self will be equal to, in my case, let's start the engine of car 1, and let me launch the code. I'll get engine on. Okay, so what I want you to know is that self represents the object that you are working with, okay? Now let's do the same thing for car 2. So I'm going to say car.startEngine, and I'm going to mention the object that I'm going to work with, which is car 2. There's actually another way to call a method of a class, simply by just saying car1.turn, let me just write turn off engine and parentheses. Now what this notation exactly means. First of all, these two notations will give the same output, but the syntax differ. And most of the time, we use this notation. But what does it mean and how does it work? Now, when you say car1.turnOffEngine, well, behind the scenes, you are passing car1 as argument for the method, which is turn-off-engine. Simple as that. Let's see what we can do with car2. So car2.turnOffEngine. Okay, there's a problem. I wrote something wrong. Turn-off-engine. Okay. Now let me launch my Python code. So as you can see, engine on, engine off, and engine off. Let us fix this notation and to make it similar to the other one. So instead of calling the class at the beginning, I can just say car1.startEngine. I'm going to take off this comment, and I'm going to do the same thing for the car2. I'm going to say car2.startEngine, and I should get the same output as before, and I got the same output as before. Now, what you need to take away from this video. First, to create a class, you need to mention the keyword class followed by the name of the class. So class and name of the class, which is car. Second, to create an object, you need to simply create a variable and mention the class name followed by parentheses. Did we do that? Yes, we did. Mentioned a variable, then mentioned the class name followed with parentheses, so we actually created an object. Also, you've learned in this video what means self. So self means a certain object, or the object you want to work with. And to call a method, well, there's two ways. First, you can just mention the class name followed by the method name, and inside as parameter, you mention the object, okay, which is the variable that stores the object. Or there's a better way. They are all similar, but this is more practically used. You can just mention the variable that stores the object. Okay, so in our case, it's car1 dot the method name, which is startEngine or turn-off-engine, okay? This is it for this video. Make sure to subscribe and stay up to date on the next video where we will learn about the constructor init in Python. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was valuable for you, and I hope you learned something new. Now I invite you to watch any of these end screens that will appear in front of you right now. and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.